Hi, how are you? This is Greg Nielsen, President and CEO of Nielsen Training and Consulting. I'm joined today by my friend and colleague Gary Romano, President and CEO of Civitas Strategies. As many of you know, Gary and I have been working closely on the PPP and many of the other stimulus programs that are out there, and have been delving deeply into all of the developments in those areas. And so I thought we would hop on video today and just share some of the rumblings that we've been hearing in real time as to what we think and what we're seeing in the landscape and what we think might happen with some of these vital programs. This is especially relevant. There was a recent report that showed that 85% of PPP funds are expected to be spent or expected to run out by the first week in August. And so we know that many of you are thinking about what might be next for yourselves personally, for your small businesses. So we wanted to hop on a video and share some thoughts with you there. We will definitely get to the PPP and what we're hearing there. But first, we wanted to chat about some of the lesser known or lesser used programs that are still providing vital benefits and services for organizations around the country. For that, Gary, if you want to just share and open up the
Yeah,
discussion.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think there's this very interested focus, and there should be, on what comes next in terms of business stimulus. But as you're saying, there's things that are already out there that we're not utilizing. And like, one of the ones that I've been talking about a lot lately is the Families First leave. And a lot of people don't understand it. It's super simple to do. But basically, either you, even if you're a sole proprietor or single individual, can get 2 weeks of sick leave for you or a family member who gets COVID, and up to 12 weeks if you need to take care of a kid who can't go to school, right? And with that time, if it's the sick leave, it's 100% pay. There is an upper limit. I forget what it is. I want to say it's like 500 a day or something. I think it's higher than that. But there's also, if it's for taking care of a kid, it's 2/3, right? But you get the money from the federal government in a refundable tax credit. So you fill out this very simple form. It's a very simple form. And basically, the government sends you a check saying, this is the amount of time that was allocated for that. So we're going to pay it out to you.
Are there
Um,
limitations, Gary, on who that's open to? Are there size of business, anything like that?
there aren't limitations. And that's part of what's so crazy about it is, we were on a webinar last week related to the PPP for the state of Virginia. And one of the people in the text box was saying, I just got COVID, a sole proprietor. And, I was trying to, even though it was about the PPP, I was trying to quickly say, like, look at Families First, because that's 2 weeks of pay that you can get. And I've got to say, the form is simple to use. The government pays quickly on it. It's a refundable tax credit. So you get that money back in the form of a check very quickly. And so it's one of those things where I shrug, because a lot of people haven't used it. And it's a great tool. And you could use it intermittently. So as you think about the fall and you think about schools not being open all the time or suddenly closing, you could use it that way as well. And you can still get the 2/3 back, even if, let's say, you're paying your employee for the full day. If they're out taking care of that kid, you can declare it that leave and get at least 2/3 of that back.
And for employees, is it a one-time deal so you can take up to the 2 weeks one time?
12 weeks. Yeah,
Well,
no, it's through the end of the year. So you can take it intermittently. So you could even do, I'm going to be off every Friday, or let's say every Thursday and Friday, because my school district's doing hybrid. And I want to be home with the kid Thursday and Friday for until those 12 weeks runs out.
right.
So you have a fair amount of time that you can do. The other thing that we're not seeing a whole lot of people take advantage of, two different loan programs, which I find interesting. One is the SBA 7A loan, which is their flagship loan program. A lot of people are familiar with it. It's this bread and butter small business loan. It's not forgivable like the PPP, but right now the Fed is paying 6 months of principal and interest. So if you think about it, if you qualify and get the loan, that's 6 months that you're not paying it down. There's
Right.
no prepayment penalty. So it's essentially free cash, right, for that time period if you want to worry about cash flow. Similarly, the Main Street Lending Program, just recently, it's been out, and very few takers, very low interest rate. It's like LIBOR plus, I want to say, like 1 or 2 points or something along those lines. Right now, I think it would be around 3%. And starting last Friday, it was opened up for nonprofits. So if you have at least 10 employees, the first year is no interest, no payments. The interest starts in year 2, but you don't have to make a payment until the start of year 3.
So it sounds like there are relief options out there
Yeah,
for organizations of various shapes and sizes. Some of them just may be a little underutilized at this point.
that's absolutely right. And I think those are some to be looking at. But of course, I know people are thinking, what's going on with the PPP?
The PPP has been one of those topics that has raged since it first passed, and it's important to recognize for many organizations, as you know, Gary, it's been a lifeline. It
Yeah.
has allowed them to either stay in business or stay open and keep their key employees during a really challenging period of time. So we want to share what we're hearing as far as the PPP. And again, this is just up to the minute information. This is not fact yet, because as you've alluded to, nothing is set in stone just yet. So what we're hearing with the PPP is that we do think there will be a next version of the PPP. One of the programs that's gaining traction actually came from the proposal from Senator Schumer, the P4. And the early suggestions that we have are that it will allow organizations that have received and spent, that's a key point to highlight, received and spent their PPP funds, to apply again. But there are some caveats this time. There may be carve-outs for what they're calling hard-hit industries. And the typical example that's been cited has been restaurants. There may also be revenue tests. The Secretary of the Treasury has been pretty clear and pretty strong that he favors some form of revenue testing on the next round of PPP. So we don't know exactly what form it's going to take, but I will say that there's a high degree of confidence that there will be another round of PPP funding.
So the thing that's making me a little queasy hearing that is, does it now become more complex?
They have tried to simplify it.
Yeah.
Every step along the way, I think it's safe to say it was fairly complex and ambiguous at the beginning. They have tried to simplify it. They've used things like the creation of the EZ form to simplify forgiveness. And another thing to point out is Secretary Mnuchin has also expressed support for potentially turning loans under $150,000 into a grant, which would greatly simplify the forgiveness process. I say that as a way of suggesting that it's clear that they are cognizant of how complex the program is, some of the barriers that may exist for small businesses and others to access the program, and I have to think that they're going to be conscious of that in creating the next version, PPP, as well.
I would hope so. I would hope so. As you said, I think forgiveness has gotten a lot easier, which should be an incentive. Another thing I think to definitely hear, if you're, in what Greg is saying, is this P4, everything we're hearing is you've run out of your PPP. So now you need a P4, right? And so one of the questions I've had that I've been asking people, and there's no clear answer, but it does sound like you're going to have to be in the first one to get the second one. So if you haven't applied for the PPP, like, now's the time. You have till August 8th. It gives you even more incentive, because if you want
Right.
this second option, it may not be available unless you've already gone through the PPP process.
Gary, before we wrap up, any other things you're hearing rumblings in the stimulus realm?
I think the biggest thing is going to be what happens with unemployment, right? And it's really unclear right now. The latest word for Washington is that we may get an extension of the unemployment bump, the $600 bump. Everything we're hearing is that it's not a question of is there going to be a bump, but rather how big is it going to be in the end. But that's been a lifeline for a lot of families. On the business side of it, the nonprofit side of it, it's been a question at times for rehiring people. So there's a lot of implications there. And the question is just, how is that going to play out, especially when it ends at the end of July?
Gary, I want to thank you for joining me. This has been a
My
lot of
pleasure.
fun. This is obviously, as we've mentioned, an area that is ever evolving, developing by the day. So for those who are listening and enjoying the video, invite you to connect with us and invite you to follow Gary, connect with Gary. Always invite you to connect with myself as well. Stay tuned.